Okay. All right. Yeshua, I pray that you would bless this time. Us, Peter and I, speak to us, give us insight. God, you are so smart. You have things for us to see that maybe we don't want to see. Maybe we're willing to see and we just can't see it without you. God, you have things for us to hear. Give us a willing spirit. I'm nobody. I'm dust and ashes. I love you. I want to know your servant. I want to understand what the prophet Yeshua was prophesying and what was happening here. Give us insight, Yeshua, in your name. Amen. Okay. So we have here Isaiah 52:14. Ka'asher shamemu alecha rabim. Okay. Just as they were appalled, okay, or dumbfounded, appalled, stupefied, horrified, on you, or because of you, on account of you, the many. So you have this thing. Here's the servant. He was addressed in the prior verse by, he was spoken of in the third person by Yahweh. Hene, behold my servant. He'll succeed. He'll prosper. He'll be elevated. All that. Okay, and then the speaker, which it was Yahweh in 13, turns and addresses the servant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can hear it as Yahweh because Yahweh was the one speaking in verse 13, our prior verse. So you could hear this as Yahweh saying this to the servant. Just as many were horrified because of you, struck dumb, like went ghostly white, basically like looked like a ghost because of how appalled they were looking at you, your appearance.
You could appalled mean disgusted.
Disgusted is part of it for sure. It's horrified. It's more like stupefied, horrified, like it's struck dumb. Like you go pale. Things you go pale looking at.
Okay.
Disgusted can have a sense of anger in English, and I don't think anger is here. What's there is a kind of lifeless, being appalled.
Okay.
It would be like an unwilling party getting blood all over their face or something.
Okay.
So Asher Shomemu Alecha Rabim. Now it is possible to hear this speaker. We don't know. The speaker could be Yeshua. It could be the prophet himself.
Okay.
It could be the messenger that's going to be entrusted with the message later on, who's believed our message. So the prophet and maybe some other messenger addressing the servant. So the question is the servant being addressed by a messenger or by Yeshua, or is the servant being addressed by Yahweh? Both are possible readings.
See, but how could they be addressing the servant if it's spoken in the point of view as at him? Isn't him the servant?
Yeah.
So they're not talking to the servant.
No, because it's Alecha, you. Just as many were appalled,
you were appalled?
They shifted to the second person.
Many were appalled at looking at you?
You.
Okay.
They say you, not at him.
Okay.
So this right here, Alecha, demonstrates that the servant is being addressed directly as you. So then the question becomes, it's second person masculine singular. So it is a male you, a singular male you. It's the servant who others were appalled at. The question becomes, who is saying this phrase? It's possible to hear it as Yahweh because he spoke of the servant in 13. It's also possible to think of the messenger saying it about him. And it raises the question, what kind of interaction would later messengers have with the servant? What kind of interaction and relationship would the messengers who were entrusted with this message regarding the servant, could they have had a relationship with the servant? Okay, that's a possible thing to consider here. So the many, and this is many were appalled at you. Okay, kin mishchat meish. So, or this is it's an adverb and it intensifies it. So much so, or so disfigured or corrupted. Okay, so disfigured or corrupted were you from man, away from man. Mm-hmm. You were disfigured away from man would mean corrupted beyond the form of man or unrecognizable. Your disfigurement took you so far afield from what we call a human.
Yeah, more of a creature than a human.
You were made to be non-human or look unhuman, away from mankind, broken, disfigured. Now, the word here, mishchat, I have notes here. This phrase mishchad is used in Leviticus 22:25, and it's used in our verse Isaiah 52:14. The verb is used throughout the Torah or the Tanakh, the Old Testament, in a lot of places, and I think a telling one is Genesis 6:11-12. It speaks to the idea of the Gentiles and the nations. The Gentiles and nations and kings are the source of the human source of the great defilement that spreads throughout the land. Okay, the serpent is the king behind those thrones, and they are kings that cause this defilement. The nations and the pagans are associated with this uncleanness. And it's interesting that this is used here because they say he was disfigured beyond the form of a man. This can mean to be like a beast. This has ideas, or this has connections to the Gentiles, who were viewed as, okay, through idolatry and through divination, you have so marred the image of God that you are like beasts. Okay. Which would mean the servant is being, in some way, comparable to the state of Gentiles. But that makes sense because there is going to be some flavor of that, because the very next verse is, kings will shut their mouths because of you. Gentiles and nations will see and understand.
That's the next verse, right?
That's 15. Right. That's right. So this verse, our verse, is going to lead us there. But it's accentuating the disfigurement and the brokenness, the corruption of it. He was so corrupted beyond man. And corrupted doesn't mean like morally corrupted.
Yeah, it's the external.
It doesn't have to be exactly. It doesn't have to be morally corrupted. It can be a state that you're brought in or put in. Okay, our verse in Leviticus 22:25. If we look at that, we can see. We'll take a peek at it real quick. Leviticus. We're going to jump to Leviticus 22. Verse 25, and this is the other place that the word mishchad occurs, and it occurs in these. It occurs in these two places, just these two. Our verse 52:14 and this verse, and let's see what it says. Umiyad ben nechar, and from the hand of the son of a foreigner, which is essentially descendants or foreigners, like Gentiles. Okay, Umiyad ben nechar. Lo tachrevu, you're not allowed to bring near from the hand of a foreigner et lechem, food Elohechem, an offering. You can't bring a food offering, which is a sacrifice. You can't bring a meal offering, a food offering into the temple from the hand of a foreigner to Yahweh.
Okay.
Which a food offering is the reference that Yahweh will receive it. He eats it. Metaphorically, he consumes it and receives it, meaning Gentiles are forbidden from access to Yahweh in the temple. Covenantally, they're excluded. But the reason is going to be stated here. So, well, why? Mikol ele, and from any of these, any such animal or any kind of thing you would bring as a food offering or any kind of offering.
And what, that could be ram, whatever.
That's right. It could be any of the animals. It could be a bread offering. It could be any kind of, it could be a libation. You can't. Yahweh is not going to, he doesn't receive from foreigners, okay? And why? The reason? Ki mashchatam, because they are deformed. Or a better way to say it, because the disfigurement of them, that's a direct translation, mashchatam, the word is mashchat, mashchatam, the disfigurement of them, bahim, is in them. The disfigurement of them is in them. It's like a contagion.
Is it? And the Gentiles?
That's right.
Okay. And the foreigners.
And this is a word we have, mum bum. Mum is a flaw or a kind of marring uncleanness. Mum is used for leprosy. Okay, they are defiled. Their defilement is within them. Their flawedness is within them. You're not allowed to bring...
So it's nothing you can get rid of. It's a part of you.
Another word for this is blemish. So the opposite of this would be tamim. You have when you bring a lamb, it can't have a mum in it.
Okay.
It cannot have a blemish on it. An unblemished lamb. They are blemished. Their blemish is in them. Lo yeratzu, not they will be accepted. Lachem, on your behalf. On your behalf. Okay. So they're rejected outright because their defilement is within them. So you have this idea of the Gentiles being rejected because of the defilement they carry, which is true of the Gentiles. And it's great for Israelites to say, hey, you're out, you're excluded. But the prophet Isaiah is saying, you too are excluded because your defilement is within you. Your heart, through covetousness, is leprous as well. And you are headed to die just like the Gentiles. That would be this claim. And an example of how bad this is and how, again, it touches Gentiles and kings and their perversion. Okay, the way that they live and the brokenness that Gentiles are under. Go to Genesis 6:11, and we can look at 12 and 13 if we need to. Ve'tishachet ha'aretz lifnei ha'elohim. And the earth, which can mean the population, the earth was, and also the land, was corrupted before the face of God. God came there in his presence, before the presence of God. God came to the earth in the days of Noah to see.
It's like this is corrupt.
And this is corrupted. Va'timalei ha'aretz chamas. How was it corrupted? The earth was filled with violence. This word chamas is used in Isaiah 53, verse 9, where it says, oh, the good old boys buried him in a nice tomb because they knew he had done no violence. Okay? And so the idea is they claimed he was a source of violence. They claimed he was defiled.
Acted like he didn't.
That's right. They claimed he was corrupt and then proved they didn't really believe he was corrupt. Okay, so this is us too. So we have this verse. Let's look at 12. V'yare Elohim et ha'aretz ve'hinei nishchata. So there he is. He shows up and he sees God, the earth. Oh. And behold, hinei nishchata. It was corrupt. He hishchit, because they had corrupted them. They had corrupted all flesh. Hishchit kol basar et darko, his ways. They had corrupted their own flesh. They had corrupted themselves or caused corruption. They had caused corruption, all flesh, all living things, all flesh.
Themselves along with all animals.
That's right, all living creatures. Et darko, okay, et darko, in their ways, going their own way is the idea. In their own ways, all their ways were corrupted. Rather, all the ways that they took were corrupted. All haaretz, on the earth. And then our last verse, verse 13, this is where God speaks about it. Vayomer Elohim le Noah, he speaks to Noah. Kates kol basar, the end of all flesh, Bo is advancing and coming. Lefanai, before me.
Is this prophesying the flood?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what it's prophesying, which is water, which is used to cleanse. There's also that leprosy metaphor, because what happens when you're so let's say you have leprosy, and then how do you get out of that state? First, you gotta be healed, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you're healed, can you just walk back in?
No.
What the process is, a priest goes and examines you. The priest declares whether you are defiled or clean. So they judge you. If they judge you as clean, can you go back in? No, not yet. What you have to do is offer an offering, an asham, actually. And so do you just offer it, and then after you offer the offering, you're back in? No. You can't even do the ritual until you shave all your hair off, even your eyebrows, your pubic hair, your chest hair. You shave all your hair off on your head, and you bathe in the water, and you come out of the water. You're washed and cleansed in water. Then you can re-enter. It's like being born again. Newborns with no hair on them, So the idea here, that's how you would deal with it. Now let's go back to our verse. And do you have any questions about that or thoughts?
Is that kind of sort of rebirth using water form of could it be comparable to baptism in a way?
Oh, it is.
Okay.
Baptism is birth. Also, the waters pour out of a woman and the child comes out. It's an idea of a newborn, a new life, a new start. Cool. Death is also compared to waters as well, because Sheol is the watery depths. Their understanding of the underworld is it's like drowning in forever, descending like a rock, sinking like a rock into the waters of Sheol into nothingness. Okay. Descending into silence. So we're in our verse. The many. This idea of the many is an allusion to the nations as well. Mm-hmm. It can speak to the many witnesses, so it could say this. One thing that is clear, because many were appalled. Shomemu rabim. Okay, the verb appalled, this call verb, is describing this group of people, the rabim, the many.
And is the reason that it says many instead of all is because there were some people that did not view him this way? Or why isn't it all people view him this way?
So the many, the word rabim comes from rabah, which is to be great or make great or multiply. It also has an illusion of the great ones, which is a good
powerful one, which
is like kings. Kings shut their mouths. So it speaks to kings, it speaks to powerful ones, but it also speaks to a large crowd or many. One way to say this very simply is this first clause is saying, at least, that the state of disfigurement of the servant was witnessed by a large group of people.
Okay.
Many saw it, and therefore that's why the many were appalled. Many
Okay.
encountered it. This wasn't private. His disfigurement wasn't a private matter.
Yeah.
He was a public
Not just
spectacle.
a select few.
He's a spectacle.
Okay.
His disfigurement became a spectacle for many. כאשר שוממו עליך רבים, ken mishchat meish, so disfigured beyond man, from man. He's like a descent from man. This
Mhm.
disfigurement. Okay. And
Did you say like a decline of mankind?
decline, descent, subjugation. Okay, it is dehumanized, dehumanizing.
Dehumanized, but not demonized. Correct.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, not demonized. I mean,
Okay.
well, in some sense, he is demonized because they accuse him of. They will accuse the servant.
But
of
that's
being a
not what they're
source of
saying.
filth.
They're just
No.
saying dehumanized.
That's
here.
right. Here,
Okay.
it's just this is speaking of his visage.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and let's go to this next part, which is we know that marehu. Okay, marehu. The appearance or visage or the sight of him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the sight of him. Okay, mishchat meish marehu. His appearance. We should have read that together. I'm so sorry. Mishchat meish marehu is together. He was so disfigured beyond the form of any man. His appearance. So
Yeah.
we're talking about how he looks. Again, this is a problem because we have this idea throughout Isaiah of a disguise, this idea of a reversal. The Torah constantly has Yahweh coming in the form of a disguise and testing people. Okay, that's how Sodom and Gomorrah work. Sodom and Gomorrah is a big deal in the end of Deuteronomy and the song and a curse. Sodom and
But
Gomorrah,
weren't Sodom and Gomorrah Gentiles?
they were Gentiles.
So
But-
why would God have cared so much about how awful they were? Didn't he already?
He didn't give up. So this is the idea. Just
Oh,
because-
he was hopeful
well,
that.
that's a complicated issue, but the point is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is so easy to otherize.
Meaning what?
Oh, I'm not like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh,
They're
okay.
so evil.
Okay.
But the parabolic, tricky song that Moshe and Joshua sing over Israel at the end of Deuteronomy literally says, You are
Just like-
servants of Sodom. You are the seed and offspring of serpents. Your
You
vine
came from that.
literally says your vine are the poisonous grapes of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, so he says that to them, and that means this: the same people that he said that about, he said, "You have eyes, but you don't see. You have ears, but you don't hear." Who came to Sodom and Gomorrah? Did beings of light come?
No.
Did angels come?
No.
Yes, two
Yes.
angels went.
Okay.
Yahweh himself descended. When Yahweh descended, he
Oh,
came-
and he was saddened and appalled at what it had become.
the way it started is just it looked like three humans just
Yeah.
sitting under a tree. Abraham is so humble; he sees strangers and he says, "Let me take you in. You're strangers. I've never seen you here." He kills the fattened calf to feed them. He washes their feet. He takes them and takes care of them. It's revealed. It's Yahweh and two angels. He comes in human form. You see, as strangers, how will you treat strangers?
Mm-hmm.
Because the test is, Cain, where's your brother? Are we really strangers if we have the same father in heaven?
No.
That's the test. Because if Sodom and Gomorrah have to treat strangers wrong, they then will be treated as strangers by God. Okay, so, but they come disguised as in a lowly form. Appearances are deceiving. If he
Yeah.
appears disfigured, the question then is, do we just judge him as
And say,
disgusting
go
and
away.
corrupt? Or do we say, I have eyes, but I'm not getting it. I'm not seeing it. I'm not really seeing his appearance. I'm regarding him in the flesh. I'm regarding him just by this external thing. And I'll be tricked
Mhm.
by the Isaianic trick. I'll be tricked by the parable of the Moshe song, the Joshua song. Okay? So we have this idea. His appearance is disfigured. This fits with the leper picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Mishchat meish marehu, and then this last part, ve to'aro, and his form, so the outer form, the contorted his form, ve to'aro mibnei adam. Now it's explicit. It's not like his very form doesn't even look like a son of Adam. He no longer looks human. Inhuman would be a better way. Subhuman or disfigured would be a way to translate mishchat, but this mibnei adam would be like inhuman.
And I mean, I feel like I know this, but this is referring to how he was seen leading up to and when he was on the cross, correct? Because, I mean, prior to that, before he got beaten, he did look like a man.
He did, but there are still echoes of this idea because Vetoro Mibne Adam, there is the claim, the idea that he was treated like a leper even though he wasn't leprous.
Yeah.
So the idea of his form being, he was depicted as his form being corrupted. He was spoken of like that dangerous guy, that guy who has a demon spirit in him.
Because of his
that
acts,
guy who's a false prophet.
like what he did.
Because the authorities who are supposed to be the priests to declare clean and unclean rightly
Said he was
use their
unclean.
authority and say unclean.
Okay.
Okay, the authorities who are supposed to call clean, clean, and unclean, unclean, they call the clean one, the servant of Yahweh, unclean.
Okay.
And they depict him that way. So it goes beyond just that climax. Absolutely that climax, because this is repeated in the life of the servant.
Mm-hmm.
That climax, absolutely, it's the most clear that climax is. His form is disfigured. Now, here's the thing. The word Rabim touches on Gentiles. The word Adam touches on Gentiles too, but it expands it to the idea of the whole family of humanity.
Okay.
The next verse is going to speak about Gentiles. So here's the interesting thing. There is an inclusion already of Gentiles and Israel interacting with the servant.
Mm-hmm.
Interacting with the servant. So he has to deal with all, in a sense, the representatives of all of Adam.
Yeah, because it wasn't just the Gentiles that viewed him a certain way. It was a lot of Israel as well, viewed in the same exact way.
Yeah. And we're going to see everyone, both parties, Gentile and Jew, both parties, rulers of Jews, rulers of Gentiles, okay, they all lend a hand in disfiguring him.
Mm-hmm.
They lend a hand and do it literally. He is beaten. The shit is beaten out of him twice in one night by the old high priest Annas, who's the father-in-law of the current high priest Caiaphas. First, Mashiach is taken to him, and they beat the shit out of him. They strike him in the mouth. They hit him. Then they take him to the Sanhedrin with a kangaroo court kind of thing in the middle of the night.
They already know the result.
Yeah. So they bring him in the middle of the night. They're trying to condemn him. They charge him. They use the authority of a priest. They charge him under oath. They put the curse on him, and they say, I adjure you by the living God. You must answer the question, are you the Son of God? He then gives them the answer that's necessary for them to kill him. But they don't just kill him.
So he didn't say stay silent. He did answer.
Well, the reason he had to answer is because he is a perfect lamb without blemish. And the high priest, according to Leviticus 5 and 6, has the authority to invoke the name of God and tell someone to answer in a case.
And what was his answer when they asked him if he was...
They lost their mind.
No, what was his answer?
I know, because his answer was so radical.
What was it?
He'd use this title, and actually this is a really cool... Right here, Mi Bnei Adam. Bnei is plural, sons, but really a word for human is Ben Adam, son of man. What does he mean? He keeps calling himself Ben Adam in his ministry.
Oh, that was his answer, as I am son of man.
Well, he throughout his earthly ministry, he used the word Ben Adam, son of man, over and over again, over and over again. But it was confusing. In the Gospel of John, we even have an example of religious authorities trying to corner him and saying, what is this son of man you're talking about? They don't know. But that night, he's completely silent. They're all contradicting themselves. They're saying things about him that aren't true. It's surrounding the temple in his identity, but he won't say anything. A high priest who has authority says to him, I adjure you by the living God, are you the son of the most blessed, the son of the most high, the son of God? Mm-hmm. And he says, I tell you the truth. You will see the Son of Man. We probably should read it, but I'll just say it.
Yeah.
He combines two verses, and he gives away the cipher to those who have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. Mm. He gives away what he meant by Son of Man. He quotes Daniel 7:13, and he quotes Psalm 110, verse 5, and Psalm 110, verse 1. The problem with that is Daniel 7:13 describes a local Yahweh figure who comes in the form of a son of man, and he receives all authority and all worship. He rides on the clouds of heaven before the Ancient of Days, Yahweh, and he receives all glory and authority and honor. He is a divine figure. The rabbis said this is just a depiction of Yahweh. That thing that's called the Son of Man in Daniel 7:13 is Yahweh. So Yeshua is saying, I'm that God thing riding on the clouds. And then he says, Psalm 110 says, Psalm 110 says, okay. Psalm 110 verse 1 and Psalm 110 verse 5 say, the Yahweh said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, and so I'm making your enemies footstool for your feet. And then that was verse 1. And then verse 5 says, you will see the one Yahweh, he will come in strength. The Lord Ha'adon will come in strength at the right hand of God, and he will fill the valley with corpses. He is the local Yahweh. He has basically told them, when I say son of man, I actually mean the God thing in Daniel 7:13 who gets all authority in heaven and on earth. And I mean the divine priest in the order of Melchizedek, who is the Lord. How does Caiaphas respond?
Condemns him?
I don't know. He rips his robes. He tears his robes, which is a form of grief. It's also a foreshadowing prophecy. The high priest is not allowed to tear his robes, which is this irony. He breaks the Torah by doing this. He tears his robes and he says, we no longer need any other witnesses. You yourself have heard it. He's given us this claim. Let's kill him. But they don't leave him there, and they don't put him into jail. This is where it becomes important. Pilate is going to have to interact with him in the morning. It was in the middle of the night. He was basically doing something like Tikkun Chatzot, what Gentiles would call Thursday night, what Jews would say the beginning of the early Friday morning, or the beginning of Friday, which is in the evening. He went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray, and he wept. He was then arrested by a contingency of soldiers, brought to Annas the high priest. They had already started to beat the shit out of him physically. Okay, then he was
on their way there.
Yeah, and at Annas' house, and then he was transferred from Annas to Caiaphas. And Caiaphas is the one who threw together the Sanhedrin to come together. Basically, they're like, hold him there while we get the Sanhedrin together to bring him there. Okay, they finally get that confirmation from him. They've got what they need. Aha. What happens next? They go up to him and they blindfold him.
Okay.
Blindfold the Messiah. And they start beating his face. They hold their fist and they start beating his face. They grab his beard and they rip it out. They spit on him. As they're doing this and making the rounds, beating the shit out of him, they say, prophesy who hit you. Okay, this degrading humiliation. They beat the shit out of him. Then they hold him up and hold him in prison. They basically imprison him and hold him overnight and confine him. Then they take him in confines to Pilate the next morning. And he looks like a pile of shit. But it's just going to get worse. He's in front of Pilate, and Pilate doesn't like the religious authorities. He has a lot of problems with them already. There's a lot of history with that in other parts of history. So he basically is like, I don't see anything wrong with him. He won't answer Pilate. He's silent with him. Okay. When he finally does answer him, he doesn't really answer him. He gives him a riddle. And he's just declared, although it just scares Pilate more. Pilate's more scared now because he actually thinks he's innocent. There's a problem. And he doesn't he's also a bastard in some ways, so I'm not trying to make him a good guy. He doesn't like the religious authorities. He wants to piss them off. So he says, I find no fault with him, right? And they say, no, he's claimed to be the Son of God. This kind of freaks him out. He goes to him, and they try to... Sorry, that's okay. They try to... He then tries to regain control of the situation, whatever. He ends up being handed over to Herod for a little bit. They make fun of him, this kind of thing, whatever, but they don't really get anywhere. It comes back to Pilate. Pilate hands him over to the Praetorium. Essentially what he's going to do is ask for a pony to get a puppy. He's troubled because his wife has had dreams about the man. Pilate's wife has had dreams, and she's warned, do not hurt this man. He's honest. He's righteous. So now he feels bound, but he has to ask for a pony to get a puppy. These guys are they're thirsty for his blood. They're saying they want him to be killed.
And if he goes against that, then they could kill him.
Oh, it's an uprising. And this is the Pharisees in the past. They have had successful uprisings against Pilate.
Okay.
The Pharisees have initiated successful uprisings against Pilate. Okay. It's a volatile part of the world, all right? And it's a very political, it's a big game, politics there. So he asked for a pony to get a puppy. He basically is going to give them blood. He's going to give them blood. And what he does is he hands Yeshua over to the Praetorium, which is a company of soldiers around the size of 150 to 200 soldiers. It's like soldier barracks for ancient Romans. And these Romans are brutal. They're in this Judean outpost. Okay, they don't like it there. They do not get along. They are treated like they're hated by the Jews. They hate the Jews, many of them. Okay, they don't like being there. They hand them to the Praetorium and they say, this is the guy who says he's the king of the Jews. They proceed to mock him They find a purple robe. They strip him naked. They find a purple robe. They put it on the outside of him. And they grab a big stick. That's your scepter. Hold your fucking scepter. And they take thorns that are, I mean, Palestinian, these thorns that can grow in that area of Palestine,
Oh, huge.
they're really thick. And they carefully put it together and they put it on his head and they make a crown of thorns. And they beat the living shit out of him. They beat the dog shit out of him. He is covered in blood, covered in wounds. This now becomes, already it was true, because if you have enough men beating the face of someone with your fist, like you went through the night before, you'd just be a swollen monster. That was already that had already happened. Then they got a hold of him, and it was way worse. Then they made him carry the cross most of the way. Simon had to help. Simon of Cyrene, okay, he had an African nation. He had to help a Jew, okay, a Jew named Simon of Cyrene. He had to help carry the cross the rest of the way. Then they popped his arm out of socket to be able to crucify him, okay, and they nailed him. They drove nails through his hands, through his feet, okay, and with his arm out of socket. The way you die of crucifixion is actually suffocation, because you get weight on your diaphragm, and they ensure that by popping the arm out of the socket, because it's so much pain. You can't pull yourself up. So he doesn't look, and he's naked. By the way, the important part of this is he's naked. Mm-hmm. This takes on a life that is completely unimaginable. The level of the disfigurement of the slave, the servant, God's servant, Yahweh's servant and representative, is beyond comprehension. It's wild. He doesn't look human anymore, and he was brought to that state. Mm-hmm. He was made to be brought to that state by human hands, and those same human hands said, God was opposed to him. God struck him. God did this to him because he fell out of favor. This is just the worst possible turn of events that could happen for the servant. But the story will continue. So we've covered this already. We've covered our verse. Do you have any other questions about this verse?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Shabbat shalom, you guys.